Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. For those of you who are new here, I'm Dr. Karen Wilson, founder of Child Nexus. At Child Nexus, we provide parent support services for youth mental health, learning disabilities, and neurodivergence. We work to ensure that parents get the help they need when needed so their children can reach their full potential. I am excited because today my guest is Dr. John Ratey, an associate clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. He is an internationally recognized expert in neuropsychiatry and one of the foremost authorities on the brain fitness connection in areas such as ADHD, autism, aging, and cognition.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hello, Dr. Ratey. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Hello, I'm delighted to be with you this morning from Honolulu.
Yes, I'm so jealous. And so many other people who are listening from around the country because we're in a deep freeze in so many places in North America right now.
Right, but I saw on the net that it's going to warm up in about a week.
Okay.
In the rest of the country, so.
That's good news. Well, I'm excited to have you here because I think today's topic is so important. It becomes more important, every day, it seems. You have published over 60 peer-reviewed articles, 12 books, including the groundbreaking ADHD Driven to Distraction series with Ned Hallowell, which I frequently recommend to parents as a neuropsychologist. More recently, you published Spark, the Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain. And I would love for you to tell me about what sparked that focus on exercise, because I don't think we talk about it enough, particularly its impact on the brain.
Yeah, no, we don't. And what got me interested, I think, is right from the get-go in medical school. I'd always been an athlete in my life and realized the importance of it. But I was very interested came into medical school and very interested in being a psychiatrist, having spent a couple of years at Harvard, working with patients, understanding what was going on and witnessing the introduction of our incredible antidepressants. And then in the mid-'70s, when I was in medical school, there was an article in the paper lauding the antidepressants. However, in Norway, there was a hospital that gave patients a choice of either having the antidepressants or an exercise program. And their results after a few weeks of hospitalization were the same. So that it was as good as these wonderful new antidepressants to do exercise 3 or 4 times a day, varying degrees of intensity, etc. But that started me on the journey of paying attention to what exercise can do. And then the big one was when I was finishing up my residency and I was aware of ADHD existing after 16, because before that, even in the 70s, we thought that ADHD stopped at the age of 16, and so people were stopped on their medicine and stopped worrying about it, and these people often had a very bad outcome. And I saw a number of them in the hospital. But anyway, I became fascinated with ADHD as something to pay attention to in adults. And I was at a cocktail party, and one of our major professors came up to me and said, "Can I come see you?" Well, it turns out he was a MacArthur Fellow. He was a professor both at MIT and at Harvard. He was a marathoner all of his life. And he said, "Look, I hurt my knee some months ago. And since then, not only did I get initially depressed, but I haven't been able to get back to doing the kind of work that I've done throughout my life." Uh, he said, "And I think I have all the symptoms of ADHD." Now, mind you, this is when we never thought of adults having ADHD. Never. There was one paper in the literature at that point, one paper. So I treated him for his ADHD. It got better. His symptoms got better. But then he started rehabbing his knee, and he got back doing his 7 miles a day. And eventually we both decided he didn't need his medicine at all. So this really got me started in two different paths. One, an ADHD, and two, and the value of exercise. And in our books with Ned Hallowell, the 4 books we've done, we always talk about the benefits of exercise to treat ADHD symptoms, and we know the value of it for all kinds of other things like mood, like energy, certainly like anxiety and stress and mood and attention. And this is how I really got started on the quest to sort of understand what the heck was going on with exercise that made it so potent, and thus eventually led to my really paying attention to the literature as it was developed on exercise in the brain.
Yes. And I think one of the things that you've really highlighted, and I think is so important to bring to the attention of people, is that exercise is not only important for our bodies. Our brains need exercise. It's important for cognition. You talk about the fact that it optimizes alertness, attention span, and you really talk about exercise as a treatment.
Yes, it certainly it certainly is a very good treatment. Certainly, we have evidence to show that it's as good as our antidepressants to treat depression. If you can get your patients to exercise, they may not need to go on an antidepressant. That's not to say you shouldn't use them, but certainly you should be wary. And exercise has all the great benefits in terms of side effects for the body. See, I see exercise mainly as a way to treat the brain, and the body gets all the good sort of side effects. So exercise can really be as potent as any medicine that we have for almost any disorder, psychiatric or neurologic or psychologic, however you look at it, because it does so much certainly for our bodies, we well know that, but for our brains in almost every dimension.
And it's accessible, Dr. Ratey. That's the beauty of it. It is that it is so accessible to many of us. And it's not just endorphins being released when we exercise that enhances mood. I'd love for you to talk about how exercise turns on the prefrontal cortex. It impacts neurotransmitters, our attention system, motivation, memory systems.
It does all that. It does. People get the wrong idea about endorphins. It's certainly important, especially if you do enough exercise or vigorous enough. But there's a slew of other things that are turned on when you exercise. Not only are you increasing blood flow to the brain and therefore bringing oxygen and nutrients and taking breakdown products away from the brain, but you're stimulating activity in the brain because the brain is very involved in movement. We know from evolutionary studies that our big sort of contribution of exercise is that we needed to be better movers to become the evolutionary victors. And with that, our brains grew. And the part of the brains that grew is our frontal cortex, and then our prefrontal cortex and our cerebellum grew as we became more, as we became better movers, more predictive, more defined, more evaluative. And this led to an incredible development of our prefrontal cortex that eventually became it became our moving brain, but eventually became our thinking brain. So one of the great quotes that I've found is that our thinking brain is really the evolutionary internalization of movement. So that when we move, we activate the same nerve cells that we use to think with. As a side effect, it also activates the same nerve cells and the same networks that are involved with feeling good, with anxiety, but by turning on the prefrontal cortex, which you in divergent thinking are very, very interested in all the time. But exercise really turns the lights on in that area of the brain and gets it activated. And this leads to all kinds of good things. As you know, I mean, it's where our our executive functions are activated, and a big one for many children is that it turns on the frontal cortex, which has a natural break on information coming up from below, from the amygdala, from our reward center saying, do this now, grab that, whatever you want right now, you need it, and exercise turns on the frontal cortex, which helps automatically put the brakes on that so that they become more civilized. They become better integrated into the world that they're living in.
Right. And when you're talking about that prefrontal cortex and the cerebellum, again, like you're saying, we're enhancing with exercise all of those executive functions, the organization, the planning, the allocation of resources, prioritizing, all of those things get better, and attention, in addition to attention. And when you talk about the amygdala, it seems that exercise would actually help reduce disruptive behaviors and improve emotional regulation in kids as well.
Absolutely. And that's what we see. I mean, I started out my career looking at aggression and how to deal with aggression. And I became very well known in the field because of a couple of studies looking at the beta blockers helping to reduce aggression in everyone, temper tantrums to serious aggression in very disturbed patients. But the big effect of the beta blockers was in reducing bodily tension. And one of the great things that we know about exercise is it reduces bodily tension. And so overall, that helps put the brakes on. But even more important, by turning then on the frontal cortex, you have a direct pathway to put the brakes on the demands coming up from the amygdala saying, do this now, be disruptive now, go for it now, yell out now, speak out now, get up and move. All those things are help to, in a very equilibrium kind of way, to have the brakes put on so that you don't have this disruptive behavior. And that's one of the things we see when we go into schools and have done this now over many years and change their whole life by having more exercise in their curriculum. And especially in the morning, we have a focus on getting the kids moving. What happens is the first thing, almost in the first 2 weeks, we see a decrease in disruptive behavior, in not just outright aggression, but just even any kind of behavior that would be, lead to a trip to the principal. Those are reduced immediately. And it's not because the kids are more tired out. It's because their brains are more active. And when you have an active brain, you don't have these amygdala interruptions, if you will, these impulses that come up and say, do this, do that. And instead of being prisoner to your impulses, you're more able to manage them and be more reasonable. And therefore, we see this across the board if and when a school system or a classroom changes and has the teachers do an exercise program first for even 5 or 10 minutes. But the idea was for a half hour or so to get the kids moving, playing vigorously, so that not just because it burns off energy, but it helps wake them up and it helps turn on their brains.
And it seems when you do that, you prepare the brain for learning, that kids can sit in the classroom and they can better focus, they can better attend, they can better encode the information that's being presented to them, and they're motivated to participate.
All of those things. And in my book, Spark, I talk about how this happens, why this happens in terms of how the neurotransmitters and neurohormones are different. They're different. They're activated. You increase the good neurotransmitters, if you will, the norepinephrine and dopamine, serotonin, then also the endorphins and endocannabinoids, which has become a recent favorite of researchers. And most importantly, perhaps, is it increases oxytocin, the bonding and love hormone that is so crucial to success in life, but certainly in success in the classroom, where kids who have more of this are more wanting to be social, are more desired by others to be social with, to be affiliated with, to chum around with, to pal around with. And what better medicine can you do for a classroom or for life in general, for kids to have that, so that they're not bullying and or being bullied. And what we see, was over in Korea recently, talking to people there about bullying, which is a huge problem there as well as throughout the world, but certainly there. And a big intervention is to get all the kids moving and in the classroom, and to help reduce the bullying behavior. And hopefully this will bear fruit.
Absolutely. And it seems like the benefits of exercise are so far reaching, right? It's again, your physical body, your brain, and then that emotional connectivity, the connection you feel to others is also enhanced. And all of these things contribute to just overall well-being, for individuals. And you talked about the increase in serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, all of those neurotransmitters that are important for attention, for memory, for mood. You also mention in some of your work, the BDNF, the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and you talk about it as the Miracle-Gro for the brain. I would love for you to talk about that and how exercise impacts BDNF.
Yeah, right from the beginning in Spark, I identified this as one of the major factors of wellness that exercise brings. Now, BDNF is in every brain cell, and it's liberated when the brain cell is being used. And what it does in the periphery of the brain cell, and there's 100 billion of these brain cells, right? So if you activate, the more brain cells you activate, the more BDNF you're going to have. And what we know about BDNF, it is brain fertilizer. It helps our brain cells grow. And this is the way, as you mentioned, we encode the information by having our brain cells grow. And the more we exercise, the more BDNF we have available, and therefore the easier it is for our brain cells to grow and prosper. Not only to remain alive and growing as we age, but also this is the stuff that's necessary to help us learn, because we have to grow in the information, and BDNF allows us to do that. And oh, by the way, looking ahead, if you will, BDNF also is essential for our antidepressants. It's what we now monitor for the eventual success of an antidepressant if it also increases BDNF, which is only something in the past 20 years we've been following. But so it's not only a growth factor, but it's a mood enhancer. It is a stress combatant. So it combats with, and reduces the effectiveness of stress hormone. And so it's all around the perfect wellness factor. It's not a neurotransmitter, but it's something really on the scale of a neurohormone, something that's released and has an effect throughout the brain, but locally it helps our brain cells grow. And that's why I called it Miracle-Gro, because it was sort of miraculous to discover, and it helps our brain cells get thicker and better. And also at the end of the 90s, we learned that we are making new brain cells every day, a process called neurogenesis. Well, BDNF is really important for that as well. Now, neurogenesis is something that revolutionized our neuroscience understanding, because up until that time, we thought you were given a certain amount of brain cells and you're constantly using them. Well, in fact, you're able to convert some of our stem cells in the brain into brand new nerve cells. And where it seems like this is the most active is in the hippocampus, which is the center for memory and learning. So when you exercise, you increase this conversion from the stem cells into new brain cells, hippocampus, which helps with memory and learning supremely.
Right. So you're enhancing and helping this neurogenesis process. And it also sounds like when we think about neuroplasticity, and you talked about growth and rewiring of brain cells, that BDNF also enhances that process, which is so important for individuals with ADHD, with learning difficulties, where we're relying on new pathways being laid down when we have individuals who are struggling with particular cognitive processes like attention or reading.
Yes, absolutely. And then you throw in the effect of exercise on balance, coordination, and bringing in the cerebellum. In our newest book, ADHD 2.0, we have a whole chapter on the cerebellum because it needs to be shouted out.
It does.
It
And
does.
It's not just motor. There's executive functioning in there too.
Absolutely. We thought for many years that it was just about being able to walk a straight line or be balanced and be coordinated physically. However, we learned that it's very important neurologically, and that many of our disorders, including depression, but certainly things like poor speech, uh, poor reading, poor memory, uh, poor attention, all are affected by this wonderful organ that contains more than 50% of our brain cells, our total brain cells are contained in this area of the brain, the cerebellum, which lies at the base of the brain. And we thought only was involved with keeping us coordinated and balanced. It does that, but it also keeps our higher brain functions balanced. And when you have a disruption there, that leads to all kinds of shenanigans with the rest of the higher brain functions, including memory, including mood, including reading, wording. I like to say, including wording, using words. Now, it's not the only thing, but it's a contributor. So it helps set the balance and the coordination of higher brain functions. And if you have a disruption there, you're going to have problems with the reading, with attention, with speaking. So all those factors are supported by turning on or activating or making better the cerebellum, which you do by exercise in general, but you do especially if you focus on balance and coordination exercises in particular, like standing on one foot and holding it for as long as you can and then the other, or doing yoga, or doing and this is where sports come in. All the sport activities really challenge the cerebellum, and that's what you want.
And it's interesting that since your book, Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain, was published, we've had a pandemic. There's been a rise in technology use, and individuals are more sedentary. So it's even more important for people to realize the importance of exercise. And I wonder what key recommendations and takeaways you have for parents and educators, because oftentimes people ask, how much do we need as individuals? And thinking about now as we begin a new year and people are making resolutions, this should be not just a resolution, this should be a lifestyle change that is absolutely needed.
Yes. Thank God for a lifestyle change if you can do it. It's one of the reasons why I'm in Hawaii, because here the lifestyle is activity all the time, and thankfully outside, and that's why it's so compelling. But even if not, then the lifestyle change is to really get up and move. What we talk about now is that sitting is the new smoking. So the more sedentary you are, the less healthy you're going to be. And that certainly includes the effect on the brain. The more you're not moving, you're not up, you're not just exercising, but just moving about. Just saw a documentary on Ikara, which is this Greek island that have some of the longest livers in the world, in what's called a blue zone. Those people are moving all the time. They're going up and down the mountainside to do their farming, to visit other people, and etc. They're very self-sufficient, but they're moving almost all day long, taking care of their needs. They have to, and if they're not, they take breaks with others. A very social society, which is also something that's missing, and made worse with the pandemic and with our addiction that grew so much with using our computers and our cell phones and whatnot to entertain us. And it's not bad. Like now, we're both on Zoom. You're in Toronto, I'm in Hawaii, and that's wonderful. And it's a connection, but it's not the same as being together and doing things.
Absolutely. And those are great points to make because, again, exercise is one of the best ways to enhance overall well-being. Like you said, that's why you're in Hawaii. And, we know from the literature that there's so many benefits. And even, our podcast is focused on children and adolescents with learning difficulties, with attention issues, mental health struggles. But we also know that it's exercise is one of the best ways to prevent cognitive decline in all of us. So as an adult, even if you don't have learning challenges or attention issues, to optimize brain function and enhance, again, it's neuroplasticity and prevent cognitive decline, exercise is so important.
Right. But my heart has been with kids with ADD right from the beginning. And I know that my own ADD was kept under control by a steady diet of sport and activity and exercise. And I didn't think of it as anything other than fun. And this is what I wanted to do. And it was back in the day when people didn't train. You just go out and play all day long, and thankfully I was in the right environment where that was encouraged. If we stayed at home, my mom put us to work around the house. So
Right.
Everybody got out,
Right. Absolutely. And we need to bring that back because too many young people are sitting at home on their devices when we need to have more activity. They need to be more active.
Absolutely.
Dr. Ratey, thank you so much for all your scholarly contributions that have added to our understanding of not just ADHD, but understanding of the brain and behavior. If listeners want to learn more about you and your work, do they go to your website? Is that the place where I can send them?
That's probably the best place, johnratey.com. And, we're revising it over a long period of time, but it's only to upgrade it. But there are resources there that people can use. I used to spend more time adding resources, but the winds of time have changed. And, but it's a start. And I think the best resource, is to get my book, Spark, and read it and live it, because it looks at all the different disorders and the effect of exercise and how it happens. And a lot of people need to appreciate, okay, this is what I'm changing. And this is why I'm seeing this change in my behavior, this change in how I feel, this change in my productivity, this change in my socialization, which is really one of the biggest wellness points in the world, that we have. To be more social, to be with people.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. I will be sure to put a link to your book in the show notes. I think it should be on everybody's bookshelf or in everybody's purse. So thank you again, Dr. Ratey. I appreciate you and all the work that you do.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
My friends, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to check out the show notes and get a copy of Dr. Ratey's book. So how are you going to incorporate this information into your life, your child's life? If you know, I want to hear from you. I want you to go to Instagram @ChildNexusCommunity and DM me. Let me know your key takeaways and let me know one change you and your family are absolutely going to make this year in the area of exercise. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Diverse Thinking, Different Learning, a Child Nexus podcast. I'll see you again next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.